The call came at 9:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I'd just glanced at the clock on my laptop, calculating how many more hours I could squeeze in before exhaustion won. 3 case files spread across my desk, each one a puzzle of hidden transactions and buried lies. Financial forensic accounting isn't glamorous work, but I've always had a talent for seeing patterns where others see chaos. The number on my phone showed Callaway County Sheriff's Department. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Deputy Torres. I'm calling about your wife, Lauren Mitchell." My stomach dropped. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She's been in a minor vehicle accident. Physically, she's fine. Some bruising, the airbag deployed. But she's confused. She can't seem to remember the past several hours." I was already grabbing my keys. "Where is she?" He gave me an address that made no sense. Callaway County was 40 miles from our home in Ashford, nearly an hour in the opposite direction from anywhere Lauren would have reason to be. "There must be some mistake," I said. "My wife was visiting her friend Megan. She lives 15 minutes from here." Deputy Torres paused. "Sir, I can only tell you where we found her. Rural Route 12, about 3 miles past the county line. She was disoriented when we arrived. The doctors at St. Anthony's are checking her out now." I drove through the dark with my mind racing through explanations. A wrong turn? GPS malfunction? Some reasonable explanation that would make sense of my wife being found on a back road in the middle of nowhere. The hospital smelled like industrial cleaner and bad coffee. I found Lauren in a curtained-off section of the emergency room, sitting on a gurney with a thin blanket wrapped around her shoulders. When she saw me, her face crumpled. "Ryan." She reached for me, and I went to her automatically, wrapping my arms around her. "I'm so scared. I don't know what happened." "It's okay. You're okay now." I pulled back to look at her. A small bruise was forming on her forehead, and her eyes were red from crying. "What do you remember?" "Nothing. That's the terrifying part." Her voice cracked. "I remember having lunch at home, and then nothing. The next thing I know, there's an airbag in my face and a police officer knocking on my window. A doctor appeared, middle-aged, tired, the kind of exhaustion that comes from seeing too much. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Dr. Patel. Your wife's CT scan came back clear. No head trauma that would account for memory loss of this duration." "Then what caused it?" Dr. Patel's expression was carefully neutral. "There are various possibilities: stress, dissociative episodes, medication interactions." He exchanged a look with me, brief but unmistakable. "We've seen this before. I'd recommend she follow up with her primary care physician." After he left, Lauren gripped my hand tighter. "I'm not making this up. I really don't remember." "I know," I said. "Let's just get you home." But even as I helped her to her feet, I was cataloging details the way I'd been trained. Her makeup was fresh, not smudged from tears or an accident, but recently applied. Her lipstick a shade she only wore for special occasions. Her blouse was buttoned wrong, the third button skipped entirely, the kind of mistake you make when you're dressing quickly. And there was a scent on her skin, something woody and masculine. It wasn't my cologne. I'd spent a decade learning to reconstruct financial crimes from fragments of data. A receipt here, a timestamp there, the tiny inconsistencies that unravel elaborate lies. I knew what deception looked like. I just never expected to see it on my wife's face. I didn't sleep that night. While Lauren drifted off beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, running scenarios. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was the kind of paranoid husband who sees betrayal in every shadow. But I wasn't wrong. I knew it in my bones the way I knew when a set of books didn't balance. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I could confront her, demand answers, watch her lie to my face or confess through tears. We could have the screaming match, the accusations, the whole theatrical production of a marriage imploding, Or I could do what I do best. I could investigate. The next morning, I was the picture of a devoted husband. I made Lauren breakfast in bed. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh coffee. I called her office and told them she'd had a car accident and needed a few days to recover. I fluffed her pillows and asked gentle questions that she deflected with tearful confusion. "I keep trying to remember," she said, picking at her eggs. "It's like there's this blank space where the whole afternoon should be." "Don't force it. The doctor said it might come back on its own." "What if it doesn't? What if something's wrong with me?" I sat on the edge of the bed and took her hand. "Then we'll figure it out together. That's what we do." She smiled at me, grateful, relieved, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. How many times had she smiled at me like that while hiding something behind it? "I should call Megan," I said casually. "Let her know you're okay. She must have been worried when you didn't show up." The flicker of panic in Lauren's eyes was almost imperceptible. Almost. "I already texted her," she said quickly. "From my phone, while you were making breakfast." "Oh, good. I'll thank her later for being such a good friend." Lauren's smile tightened slightly at the edges. I didn't call Megan. Not yet. I wanted to see how long Lauren would maintain the fiction of a visit that never happened. 2 days later, I went to retrieve Lauren's car from the impound lot. I told her I was handling the insurance paperwork, which was technically true. What I didn't mention was everything else. The car was a mess. The front bumper crumpled, the airbags deployed, the windshield starred with cracks. I spent an hour going through it with the methodical precision I'd use on any case. I photographed everything: the mileage, the position of the seats, the contents of the glove box. I downloaded the GPS history from the infotainment system onto a flash drive. And wedged under the passenger seat, barely visible, I found a keycard. Plain white plastic with a magnetic stripe and a logo I didn't recognize at first. The Willows Inn. Room 14. I sat in the impound lot for a long time, holding that keycard, feeling the weight of it. That night, after Lauren went to sleep, I set up in my home office and began the reconstruction. The GPS data was comprehensive. Lauren had left our house at 1:23 p.m. She'd driven not toward Megan's, but in the opposite direction, south on Highway 7, then east on Route 158, through small towns I'd never heard of, until she reached a place called Ridgecrest. Population 8,400, 52 miles from our home. She arrived at an address on Maple Street at 2:14 p.m. She left at 8:31 p.m., over 6 hours. The accident happened at 9:22 p.m. on rural Route 12, a back road that wound through farmland, the scenic route that avoided the main highway. No traffic cameras, no witnesses. The kind of road you'd take if you didn't want to be seen. I pulled up our phone records next. We shared a family plan, and I had access to the account. What I found made my stomach turn. There was an unfamiliar number that appeared dozens of times over the past 4 months. Short calls at first, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, then longer, 15 minutes, 45 minutes, 2 hours. The calls happened during the day when I was at work, or late at night when I was traveling for cases. The pattern was unmistakable. This wasn't a wrong number or a telemarketer. This was a relationship. I sat back in my chair and stared at the data on my screen. Part of me wanted to storm into our bedroom and shake her awake. Part of me wanted to scream until my throat was raw. But I'd seen too many clients destroy themselves through emotional reactions. The ones who confronted too early, who tipped their hand before they had the full picture. They were the ones who lost everything. I wasn't going to lose. The next afternoon, I told Lauren I had a client meeting across town. Instead, I drove the route her car had taken, following the GPS breadcrumbs of her betrayal. 30 miles out, I stopped at a small gas station, the kind with 2 pumps and a hand-painted sign. Inside, an older man sat behind the counter reading a newspaper. "Help you?" "I hope so. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of Lauren's car. My wife was in an accident a few days ago, and the insurance company is giving me a hard time. I'm trying to verify her route. She would have passed through here around 1:45 or so on Tuesday. The man, Bill Thornton, according to the name embroidered on his shirt, studied the photo, then studied me. Something in my expression must have told him the real story. Insurance company, he repeated. Right. Please, I need to know. Bill sighed heavily. I've been married 43 years. Seen too many good men destroyed by cheating women. Come on back. He led me to a cramped office behind the counter, where a small monitor displayed security footage. It took him a few minutes to find the right timestamp, but when he did, my suspicions crystallized into certainty. Lauren's car pulled into the frame at 1:47 p.m. Through the windshield, I could see her checking her makeup in the rearview mirror, tilting her head to examine her reflection, applying lipstick with careful precision. She was smiling. Not the anxious smile of a woman in distress. Not the distracted smile of someone running errands. The radiant, anticipatory smile of a woman going to meet someone who made her happy. I'm sorry, son, Bill said quietly. Can I get a copy of this? I'll email it to you. I drove to Ridgecrest next. The Willows Inn was exactly what I'd expected. A mid-range motel on the outskirts of town, clean but anonymous. The kind of place where the desk clerk didn't ask questions and the guest didn't offer answers. I parked across the street and watched for a while. Room 14 faced away from the office, toward a small grove of trees. Private, discreet. You could come and go without anyone noticing. Someone had chosen this place carefully. The next week, I called Patricia Lawson. Patricia was a private investigator I'd worked with on half a dozen forensic cases, tracing hidden assets, locating witnesses, digging up the buried secrets that financial criminals thought they'd hidden forever. She was 55, sharp-eyed, utterly unsentimental. Ryan Mitchell, she said when she answered. Been a while. You got a new case for me? Personal matter this time. A pause. I see. I need you to run a phone number, find out who it belongs to, everything about them. Send me the details. 2 days later, Patricia called me back. The number belongs to Derek Walsh. 42 years old, commercial real estate developer, lives in Ridgecrest. Married, 2 kids. Wife's name is Natalie. She runs a nonprofit. Upstanding citizens from all appearances. What else? He owns a company called Walsh Property Group, does development deals throughout the region. And here's where it gets interesting. He's a client of Hartley and Associates. My blood went cold. Hartley and Associates was Lauren's firm. She was a project manager there, handling the architectural side of commercial developments. They've worked together? Multiple projects over the past 18 months, including one that's currently in progress, a mixed-use development on the east side of the city. Your wife is the lead architect's liaison. Business meetings, late nights at the office, project deadlines that kept her working weekends. All the excuses she'd given me, and I'd never questioned any of them. There's more, Patricia continued. I pulled some background on Walsh. He's had rumors following him for years. Affairs with colleagues, inappropriate relationships with subordinates. His wife has suspected before, but she's never been able to prove anything. Send me everything you have. That night, I began the financial forensics. I'd been putting it off, telling myself I was gathering information before jumping to conclusions. But the truth was, I'd been afraid of what I'd find. I wasn't afraid anymore. Our financial records were extensive: joint accounts, individual accounts, credit cards, investment portfolios. I'd always handled our finances, and Lauren had never shown much interest in the details beyond knowing we were comfortable. Now I understood why. The first thing I found was a credit card I didn't know existed. It was in her maiden name, Lauren Hayes, with a billing address at her office. The charges painted a picture I couldn't unsee: hotels, a boutique in the city that sold lingerie, dinners at restaurants she'd never mentioned visiting, a weekend trip to a coastal resort 6 months ago that she'd told me was a work conference. I checked my calendar. I'd been in Chicago that weekend, testifying as an expert witness in a fraud trial. The charges totaled over $8,000 in the past year. But that wasn't the worst of it. When I dug into our joint savings, I found a pattern of transfers I'd somehow missed. Small amounts at first, $500 here, $1,000 there, moved to Lauren's personal checking account. Over time, the amounts grew. $2,500, $3,000, $5,000. I ran the numbers 3 times before I believed them. $47,000. She'd siphoned off $47,000 from our joint savings. She wasn't just having an affair, she was preparing to leave, building a financial foundation for her new life while I worked 60-hour weeks to fund both households. My hands were shaking, but not with grief, with something harder, colder. I knew Lauren's passwords. We'd always shared everything, or so I'd thought. I accessed her personal email without hesitation. What I found in her spam account was enough to make a priest curse. Hundreds of emails between Lauren and Derek Walsh, stretching back 14 months. Some were logistical, meeting times, hotel confirmations, excuses to tell their spouses. Others were intimate, the kind of explicit declarations that left nothing to imagination. But one email from 3 months ago stopped me cold. Derek had written, "When are you going to leave him? I'm ready." "Are you?" Lauren's response, "Soon. I just need to get a few more things in place. He's clueless. He'll never see it coming." I read those words over and over. He's clueless. He'll never see it coming. She'd looked me in the eyes every morning. She'd kissed me goodbye. She'd asked about my day and laughed at my jokes and slept beside me every night. And the whole time, she'd been planning her escape, counting down the days until she could shed me like a snake sheds its skin. I printed every email, documented every transaction, organized everything into a file that would have made my most thorough colleagues proud. I wasn't building a case for divorce court. I was building a case for complete and total devastation. The following week, I called Megan Price. I kept my voice casual, friendly, the concerned husband checking in. "Hey, Megan, I just wanted to thank you for having Lauren over a couple weeks ago. She had that rough night with the accident, and it means a lot that she has such a good friend." There was a pause. Too long. "Oh, yeah, of course. Anytime." She was lying. I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. "She mentioned you guys went to that new brunch place," I continued. "What's it called? Over on 5th Street? "Right, yeah. The brunch place." She was guessing now, scrambling to match whatever story Lauren had told me. "The one with the eggs Benedict?" "Mm-hmm. It was really good." "There was no brunch place on 5th Street. I'd made it up." "Thanks again, Megan. Lauren's lucky to have you." After I hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, adding another name to my list. Megan had been providing alibis for months. She'd helped my wife lie to me, covered for her while she spent afternoons in motel rooms with another man. There would be consequences for that too. That night, I tested Lauren. We were at dinner, takeout Italian because she'd claimed she was too tired to cook, when I mentioned casually, "I ran into Megan at the grocery store today." Lauren's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Oh?" "Yeah, she mentioned how much fun you guys had at brunch that day. Said the eggs Benedict were amazing." I watched the calculation behind her eyes. The quick assessment of whether this contradicted anything she'd told me. "It was really nice," she said finally. "We should have her and Jason over for dinner sometime." "That's a great idea. I'll set something up." She smiled and went back to her pasta, never knowing that I hadn't seen Megan at all. That every word out of her mouth was another lie added to the pile. Over the next 2 weeks, I built my alliance. Patricia continued digging into Derek Walsh. What she found added layers to an already complicated picture. His business isn't as solid as it looks, she told me over coffee at a diner outside the city. There are shell companies, investors with obscured identities, project costs that don't quite add up. I'm not saying it's definitely fraud, but if someone with forensic accounting skills, say someone like you, took a hard look at his books, you think he's dirty? I think he's vulnerable. His business, his marriage, his reputation, they're all balanced on a knife's edge. One good push, and the whole thing comes down. I stirred my coffee. Tell me about his wife. Natalie Walsh. Old money family, father's a prominent attorney. She's suspected Derek before, but he's always managed to talk his way out. From what I can tell, she's humiliated and angry, but doesn't have proof. If she had proof, Patricia's smile was thin, her father would destroy him. I also met with Victoria Palmer, a divorce attorney with a reputation for representing high-asset clients in complicated situations. Her office was all dark wood and leather furniture, the kind of place that whispered money and discretion. I laid everything out for her, the evidence, the timeline, the financial transfers, the emails. She listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Mr. Mitchell, most husbands come to me with suspicions and hurt feelings. You've brought me a prosecution file. I wanted to be thorough. Thorough. She almost smiled. Well, here's where we stand. In this state, adultery can impact alimony considerations. The hidden assets and unauthorized transfers from joint accounts constitute financial misconduct. If you file first and control the narrative, we can ensure a favorable outcome. I want to file first, but not yet. Why not? Because I want her to have nothing when this is over. Not just nothing from me, nothing from him either. I want her to lose everything she was planning to take. Victoria studied me for a long moment. That's cold. She looked me in the eyes every day for over a year while she was planning to leave. She called me clueless. She said I'd never see it coming. I met Victoria's gaze. I saw it. All right, Victoria said. Then let's build your strategy. The first domino fell 3 weeks after the accident. I didn't contact Natalie Walsh directly. That would have been too obvious, too easily traced back to me. Instead, Patricia reached out to someone from Derek's past, a woman he'd had an affair with 5 years ago, who'd been waiting for an opportunity to return the favor. The package that arrived at Natalie Walsh's home contained carefully curated evidence. Screenshots from Derek's emails, edited to remove Lauren's identifying information for now, showing explicit messages to an unnamed woman. Photos of Derek's car at the Willows Inn, time-stamped. A timeline of his business meetings that didn't correspond to any actual business. Within a week, Natalie Walsh filed for divorce. Her father, true to Patricia's prediction, personally led the legal assault. A forensic accountant was hired to examine Derek's business dealings. Derek's carefully constructed life began to collapse. Lauren didn't understand what was happening at first. She'd been trying to reach Derek. I could tell from the way she checked her phone constantly, the way she made excuses to step outside for fresh air that coincided with attempted calls. But Derek was distracted now. Distant. When he did answer, their conversations were brief and tense. I knew because I'd cloned her phone, another skill I'd picked up from years of forensic work, and was reading every text, listening to every voicemail. "What's going on with you?" she asked him during one call. "You've been weird all week." "Problems at home." His voice was strained. "Natalie's lawyers are going through everything. I need to lay low for a while." "What kind of problems? Is it about us?" "I don't know. Maybe. Someone sent her evidence, photos, emails. I don't know where they got them." "Derek, I need to go. I'll call you when I can." The line went dead. Lauren stood in our backyard, phone pressed to her chest, looking like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. For the first time since I'd started this, I felt something like satisfaction. The following week, I tested her again. We were watching television. Or rather, she was staring at the screen while her mind was clearly elsewhere. When I mentioned casually, "You know, I still think about that night. The accident." "What about it?" "I was just wondering. When the airbag went off, you said you don't remember anything. But the police report mentioned that the radio was playing when they found you. Some country song." Lauren went very still. "I'm not a huge country fan," I continued, "but I recognized the song when I read the report. That old one about the guy losing his girl. Kind of ironic, right?" She turned to look at me. "How do you know what song was playing?" I smiled. "It was in the report." "Why?" The fear in her eyes was unmistakable. She was trying to calculate how much I knew, whether this was an innocent comment or something more. I told you, I don't remember anything." "Right." I turned back to the television. "Must have been scary. Waking up like that, not knowing where you were or how you got there." She didn't respond, but I saw her hands trembling slightly as she reached for her wine glass. I was letting her know slowly that her story had holes, that her amnesia act wasn't as convincing as she thought. I wanted her off balance, uncertain, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It would. Soon. The following morning, I made a decision that had been forming in the back of my mind for days. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and drove to Ridgecrest. The town was exactly what you'd expect from a place with a population under 10,000. A main street with a hardware store, a diner, a small bank. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where a stranger stood out like a sore thumb. I found Derek Walsh's office without difficulty. Walsh Property Group occupied a converted Victorian on Oak Street, all gleaming windows and tasteful signage. I parked across the street and watched. At 11:47, a man emerged. Tall, well-dressed, silver touching his temples in a way that probably made women swoon. He walked with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no, who expected the world to arrange itself according to his preferences. Derek Walsh, the man who'd been sleeping with my wife. I watched him climb into a Mercedes and drive away, probably headed to a business lunch or a site visit or one of the dozen legitimate activities that had served as cover for his affair. Part of me wanted to follow him, to confront him in some parking lot, to make him understand what he'd taken from me. But that wasn't the plan. Confrontation was emotionally satisfying, but strategically stupid. I needed him to fall without ever knowing who'd pushed him. I drove home and added more details to my file. 2 days later, Patricia called with an update. "I've got more on Walsh's business," she said. "One of his investors is a company called Meridian Holdings. On paper, it's a legitimate investment firm out of Delaware. But when you trace the ownership structure, let me guess, shell companies all the way down. You're good at this." I could hear her smile through the phone. Meridian is controlled by another company, which is controlled by another company, which eventually leads back to an offshore trust. It's not necessarily illegal, but it's the kind of structure you use when you don't want people knowing where the money comes from. "Can you get me documentation?" "Already working on it. Give me another week." I thanked her and hung up. The picture was becoming clearer. Derek Walsh wasn't just a cheater. He was potentially dirty in ways that went far beyond adultery. His wife's family had money and connections. If they found out about the questionable finances on top of the affairs, Derek's empire was built on sand. All I had to do was show people where to dig. Meanwhile, Lauren's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. She was making excuses to leave the house at odd hours, running to the store, meeting a colleague for coffee, needing some fresh air. Each time, she'd check her phone obsessively before leaving, her face tight with anxiety. I knew she was trying to reach Derek. I also knew he wasn't responding. The surveillance software I'd installed on her phone showed dozens of unanswered calls and texts, each one more desperate than the last. "Please call me. I need to talk to you." Derek, what's happening? You're scaring me. I love you. Whatever's going on, we can figure it out together. He never responded. One evening, I came home to find her crying in the guest room. She tried to hide it when she heard me approach, wiping her eyes and forcing a smile. Hey, I didn't hear you come in. Is everything okay? Fine, just hormones or something. You know how it is. I stood in the doorway, watching her. The woman I'd married was dissolving before my eyes, becoming someone I barely recognized. Desperate, pathetic, trapped in a situation of her own making. Lauren, I said quietly, whatever's going on, you can tell me. For a moment, I thought she might actually confess. I saw the words forming behind her eyes, the impulse toward honesty struggling against months of deception. Then her expression hardened. Nothing's going on. I'm just tired. Okay, I turned to leave. I'm ordering Thai for dinner. Your usual? Sure, thanks. I walked away, marveling at the human capacity for self-destruction. Even now, with her affair crumbling and her husband clearly suspicious, she couldn't bring herself to tell the truth. The lies had become so integral to who she was that honesty felt like death. It was almost sad. Almost. 3 weeks after the accident, I suggested a dinner party. We've been so stressed lately, I said over breakfast. Let's reconnect with friends. Have people over, good food, good wine. It'll be fun. Lauren looked uncertain. I don't know. I'm still not feeling quite myself. All the more reason. Being around friends will help. What do you think about next Saturday? She couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. Sure. Who did you have in mind? I was thinking Megan and Jason, Anna and Kyle. I paused. And maybe your sister? Christina? You two have seemed distant lately. It might be nice to reconnect. Lauren's smile was strained. Okay, Saturday it is. I spent the week preparing, shopping for ingredients, selecting wines, choosing the right music for the evening, and assembling my evidence into a presentation. Saturday arrived. Lauren was nervous all day. I could see it in the way she fussed over the table settings, checked her phone every few minutes, jumped at small sounds. She thought she was hiding it, but I'd become fluent in her tells. Do you think this tablecloth is okay? She asked, smoothing imaginary wrinkles. Maybe the blue one would be better. The white looks perfect. Stop worrying. I'm not worried. I just want everything to be nice. She adjusted a wine glass by millimeters. What time did you tell everyone? 6:30. She glanced at the clock. 4 hours to go. I could practically hear her mind racing, calculating variables, wondering what I might have planned. Some part of her suspected this wasn't an ordinary dinner party. Our guests arrived between 6 and 7. Megan and Jason Price came first, Megan carrying a bottle of wine with hands that trembled slightly. Her eyes swept the room when she entered, looking for something, or someone. Ryan, so good to see you. Her hug was stiff, performative. Lauren, the house looks beautiful. Jason seemed oblivious, chatting amiably about the traffic and his recent golf game. He had no idea his wife had been complicit in my wife's affair. That would change soon. Anna and Kyle Bennett arrived next, cheerful and relaxed, bringing a dessert they'd picked up from the bakery downtown. They represented normalcy, a happy marriage, uncomplicated friendship, everything Lauren and I had pretended to have. Finally, Christina Hayes. Lauren's younger sister hesitated at the door, her face pinched with anxiety. She kept shooting nervous glances at Lauren when she thought I wasn't watching. Thanks for having me, Christina said, accepting a glass of wine. It's been too long since we all got together. Family's important, I agreed, especially in difficult times. Christina flinched. She definitely knew. Dinner was excellent, if I do say so myself. Roasted lamb, rosemary potatoes, a salad with goat cheese and walnuts. I kept the wine flowing and the conversation light. We talked about work, about the neighborhood, about plans for the holidays. Anna mentioned her sister's wedding coming up. Kyle complained about his commute. Jason recounted a story about a disastrous business trip that had everyone laughing. Through it all, I watched the women. Lauren, her smile too bright and her laughter too quick. Megan, drinking more than usual, her eyes darting to the door as if planning an escape. Christina, barely touching her food, pushing lamb around her plate. They sensed something was coming. They just didn't know what. I waited until we'd finished the main course and were lingering over dessert. The timing had to be perfect. "Lauren," I said, in the same casual tone I'd used all evening. "I've been meaning to ask, did you ever figure out how you ended up in Callaway County that night?" The table went quiet. It was as if someone had sucked all the air out of the room. Lauren's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "What?" "The accident, remember? You were found on rural Route 12, almost 40 miles from where you said you'd be." I took a sip of wine, watching her over the rim. "The police report mentioned your car's GPS showed you were in Ridgecrest all afternoon, at a place called the Willows Inn." Megan made a small sound, almost a whimper. Jason looked confused, glancing between his wife and Lauren. "What's going on?" Anna asked, her voice uncertain. "I told you," Lauren said, her voice tight, her knuckles white around her napkin. "I don't remember." "Room 14. I reached into my pocket and placed the keycard on the table. It sat there between the wine glasses and the dessert plates, small and white and damning. "You were there for over 6 hours." "Ryan, please," Megan started. "You don't get to speak right now, Megan." My voice was calm but carried an edge that silenced her instantly. "You've done enough speaking. All those alibis, all those cover stories. We'll get to your part in this." Jason's face was going red. "What alibis? Megan, what is he talking about?" "The phone records were interesting too," I continued, ignoring him. "Dozens of calls to the same number over the past 4 months, some of them lasting hours, always when I was at work, or traveling, or asleep." I looked at Lauren steadily. "Do you want to tell everyone who you were calling, or should I?" Lauren's mouth opened and closed. For a moment, she looked like a fish gasping for air. Then her expression hardened into defiance. "This is insane." She pushed back from the table, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You're embarrassing me in front of our friends. Whatever you think you know, I think I know," I laughed, a hollow sound that made everyone flinch. "Let me tell you what I know, Lauren. I know you've been having an affair with Derek Walsh for 14 months. I know you met him at the Willows Inn at least twice a month, sometimes more. I know about the credit card in your maiden name, the one you use for hotels and lingerie and weekend trips to coastal resorts while I was working." Christina buried her face in her hands. Anna had gone pale. Kyle looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. "I know about the $47,000 you transferred from our savings," I continued, my voice rising slightly. "All those small amounts, spread out over time so I wouldn't notice. Building your escape fund, planning your new life. Ryan. And I know what you wrote to him 3 months ago, when he asked when you were going to leave me." I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket and placed it beside the keycard. "You said, 'Soon. I just need to get a few more things in place. He's clueless. He'll never see it coming.'" The words hung in the air like poison. "You called me clueless." My voice was quiet now, which somehow made it worse. "You looked me in the eyes every day for over a year while you were planning to leave, while you were sleeping with another man, while you were stealing from our marriage, and you thought I'd never figure it out." Lauren was crying now, but the tears seemed more like frustration than remorse. "You went through my things? You invaded my privacy? How dare you? How dare I?" I stood, And for the first time, I let the full weight of my anger show. You invaded our marriage. Your privacy ended when you started sleeping with another man, when you stole from our savings, when you made our entire relationship a lie. It's not, you don't understand. Then explain it to me. Explain to all of us. I gestured at our guests, frozen in their seats like witnesses at an execution. Tell us how you fell in love with your client. Tell us how I drove you to it. Tell us whatever story you've been rehearsing. She couldn't speak. The words she'd prepared, the justifications, the deflections, the carefully crafted narrative of a neglected wife, had evaporated under the weight of evidence she couldn't deny. I turned to Christina. Did you know about this? About Derek? Lauren's sister looked up, her face streaked with tears. Ryan, I'm sorry. She asked me not to say anything. She's my sister. I didn't know what to do. You could have done the right thing. You could have told me. I know. I'm so sorry. Don't. Lauren's voice was sharp, cutting through her own tears. Don't you dare apologize to him, Christina. He violated my privacy. He's been spying on me. You've been cheating on him for over a year, Christina shot back. What did you expect was going to happen? The dinner party dissolved into chaos. Jason was on his feet now, his chair knocked over behind him. Megan, you knew about this? You helped her? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me. Anna and Kyle were gathering their things, murmuring apologies, desperate to escape the explosion. Kyle caught my eye on the way out, a look of male solidarity, sympathy, horror at what he'd witnessed. I'm sorry, Ryan, Anna whispered. I'm so sorry. I nodded and let them go. They'd served their purpose, witnesses to the truth. Lauren was still crying, alternating between rage and desperation. You had no right. No right to go through my things, to spy on me. I had every right. You're my wife. That was my money. This was my marriage. I kept my voice level, refusing to match her hysteria. And I gave you every opportunity to tell the truth. Every chance to come clean. You chose to keep lying. Because I knew you'd react like this. Like a robot, like a machine. I reacted like a man who was being cheated on. A man who was being stolen from. A man whose wife was planning to leave him. I shook my head. What did you expect, Lauren? Tears? Begging? Did you want me to fall apart so you could feel better about what you did? She had no answer for that. Jason was still demanding explanations from Megan, his voice rising. How long? How long have you known? Since February. Megan's voice was barely a whisper. She asked me to cover for her. Said it was just coffee at first. Then you kept lying. For months. You looked me in the face and lied. The parallels weren't lost on anyone. 2 marriages, 2 betrayals, 2 wives who'd chosen deception over honesty. Christina stood awkwardly near the door, torn between her sister and her conscience. Maybe we should all just calm down. Stay out of this, Lauren snapped. You've done enough. I've done enough? I kept your secret. I defended you. Christina's voice broke. I told myself you'd end it, that you'd come to your senses. But you just kept going. And now look at this. Look at what you've done. The Prices left soon after, Jason practically dragging Megan out the door, their voices still audible from the driveway. Christina followed, shooting me one last apologetic look before disappearing into the night. And then it was just Lauren and me, surrounded by the ruins of a dinner party and a marriage. Happy now? She asked bitterly. No, I said honestly. I'm not happy at all. I started clearing the table, stacking plates with mechanical precision. Lauren watched me for a moment, then fled to the guest room. I heard the door slam, heard her sobbing through the walls. I finished cleaning up, loaded the dishwasher, wiped down the counters. The routine was soothing in its mundanity. When everything was clean, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in the darkened living room. I'd done what I set out to do. The truth was out. The narrative was shattered. Everyone who mattered knew what Lauren had done. But I felt empty, hollowed out. Like I'd won a battle only to realize the war had destroyed everything worth fighting for. The aftermath was exactly as brutal as I'd planned. Lauren moved into the guest room that night. The next morning, she emerged red-eyed and defiant. "We need to talk," she said, standing in the doorway of the kitchen where I was making coffee. "Okay." I poured a cup and sat down. "Talk. What you did last night was cruel. You humiliated me in front of our friends, our family. You humiliated yourself. I just provided the evidence. I made a mistake, Ryan. People make mistakes. But this," she gestured vaguely, encompassing the dinner party, the revelations, everything. "This was vindictive. This was calculated." "Yes," I agreed. "It was. Don't you feel anything? Aren't you hurt? Angry?" "I'm furious," I said calmly. "I've been furious for weeks. But I learned a long time ago that acting on anger makes you stupid. So I did what I do best. I gathered evidence. I built a case. I presented the facts. You're talking about our marriage like it's one of your fraud cases. That's what it felt like. Finding out my wife had been deceiving me, stealing from me, planning to leave me. That felt exactly like uncovering a fraud." She sat down across from me, her expression shifting from anger to something softer. "Ryan, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But please, can't we work through this? We've been married for 8 years. We have a history. We have nothing." I cut her off. "Whatever we had, you destroyed it. Not with the affair. Affairs can sometimes be forgiven. But with the planning, the calculating, the $47,000 you squirreled away while looking me in the eyes every day. You were preparing to leave me, Lauren. You had an exit strategy. That's not a mistake. That's a decision. I wasn't sure. You wrote to him that I'd never see it coming. That's certainty. That's intent." She was crying again, but I'd become immune to her tears. "I did love you once. In the beginning, I really did. Maybe. Or maybe you loved the life I could provide. The nice house, the comfortable income, the stability that let you pursue your career without financial stress." I shrugged. "I'll never know for sure now, will I? Because everything you've told me for the past 14 months has been a lie. That's not fair." "Fair?" I leaned forward. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been honesty. Fair would have been telling me you were unhappy, that you'd met someone else, that you wanted out. Fair would have been treating me with the basic respect one human being owes another." I sat back. "Instead, you chose deception. You chose theft. You chose to make me the fool in a story you were writing with someone else." She had no response to that. The silence stretched between us, heavy with the wreckage of years. "What happens now?" she finally asked. "Now I file for divorce, and you move out." Over the following days, she cycled through every emotional manipulation in her arsenal. Rage, screaming that I'd violated her trust, that I'd humiliated her, that I was cruel and vindictive. Self-pity, sobbing that I didn't understand the pressure she'd been under, that she'd felt neglected, that I worked too much and didn't give her enough attention. Bargaining, promising to end things with Derek completely, to go to counseling, to do whatever it took to save our marriage. I listened to all of it with detached interest. It was like watching a performer cycle through their repertoire, trying different acts to see which one would land. One evening, she tried seduction, appearing in our bedroom in the lingerie she'd bought with her secret credit card, the lingerie she'd worn for Derek. "We can start over," she whispered, reaching for me. "Rebuild what we had." I stepped back. "We can't rebuild on a foundation of lies. And I don't want to." Her expression flickered through hurt, then anger, then calculation. Is there someone else? Is that what this is really about? No, there's no one else. There's just the truth about who you are, and the realization that the woman I married either never existed or died a long time ago. She slept in the guest room that night, and every night after. Meanwhile, Derek Walsh's collapse was spectacular. Patricia kept me updated as the situation unfolded. Natalie's forensic accountant, a woman named Sandra Reeves who'd built her reputation on being relentless, found the irregularities within days of starting her examination. The Meridian Holdings connection was just the beginning, Patricia told me over coffee at our usual spot. There are at least 3 other shell companies funneling money through Walsh Property Group. Some of it traces back to overseas accounts. His partners are terrified. They're worried they'll be implicated in whatever he's been doing. Is it actually illegal? Patricia shrugged. That's for the authorities to determine. But at minimum, it's embarrassing. The kind of thing that makes investors nervous and clients disappear. Within 2 weeks of Natalie filing for divorce, Derek's carefully constructed life was in freefall. His partners called emergency meetings. Investors demanded independent audits. Deals that had been on the verge of closing suddenly fell through as counterparties got cold feet. I monitored Lauren's phone as Derek spiraled. Their conversations grew shorter, more bitter, more desperate. "This is your fault," Derek told her during one call. His voice was raw, exhausted. "Someone found out about us and they're using it to destroy me." "It wasn't me. I swear, Derek, I didn't tell anyone." "Then who? Who else knew? Who else had access to those emails?" "I don't know. Maybe your phone was hacked, maybe—" "My wife's lawyers have everything. Screenshots, photos, records. Stuff I never even knew existed." His voice dropped to something that sounded like terror. "They're going to take everything, Lauren. The business, the house, custody of the kids. Her father is calling in every favor he has. We can figure this out together. There is no together. Don't you understand? I can't see you anymore. I can't talk to you. My lawyer says any contact could be used against me in the divorce. But what about us? What about all our plans?" A long pause. When Derek spoke again, his voice was cold. "There is no us. There never really was." 2 days later, Lauren confronted me in the kitchen. "You did something." Her voice was flat, certain. "To Derek. To his business. This was you." I followed the evidence. I reconstructed the truth. I poured myself a glass of water, meeting her gaze calmly. If someone happened to share that evidence with people who needed to see it, well, that's just the consequences of your choices. You destroyed him. He destroyed himself. You both did. I set down the glass. "My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce." She stood there, trembling with rage or grief or something in between. "I never thought you could be this cold. This calculating. And I never thought you could lie to my face for 14 months while planning to leave me. I guess we both learned something about each other." He called her one more time, Derek did. 2 days later. Furious, paranoid, looking for someone to blame. "Did you tell someone? Did you keep records? My wife got everything. Documents I've never even seen before." "I didn't do anything," Lauren was sobbing. "Derek, please, I would never betray you. We're done. Don't call me again." The line went dead. And just like that, Lauren's grand romantic future evaporated. No Derek. No money she'd been squirreling away. That would go back to me in the divorce. No new life built on the ashes of the old one. Nothing but the ruins of 2 marriages and a reputation that would follow her for years. I filed for divorce on a Monday morning. Victoria Palmer had prepared everything with her customary precision. We'd spent hours in her office going over strategy, anticipating Lauren's possible defenses, planning for contingencies. "She'll try to paint you as the villain," Victoria warned me. "The cold, calculating husband who spied on his wife. Some judges respond to that narrative. I have documentation showing she stole $47,000 from our joint accounts. I have proof she was planning to leave me. I have emails where she called me clueless. Which is why we'll win. But she might try to drag this out, make it painful. She doesn't have the resources to drag anything out. I made sure of that. Victoria raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. She'd represented enough betrayed spouses to know that revenge came in many forms. The petition included everything: evidence of adultery, documentation of unauthorized financial transfers, a request for restitution of the $47,000, and a request that Lauren be responsible for her own legal fees given her demonstrated pattern of deception. Lauren was served that afternoon. I wasn't there to see it, but I imagined her face when the process server appeared at the door. She called me that night, crying. "You didn't have to do it this way. We could have worked something out between ourselves. Like you worked out transferring our savings without telling me? Like you worked out all those meetings with Derek? I think I'll stick with lawyers. I can't afford a lawyer. You know I can't. You have $47,000 of my money. Use that. That money is gone. I spent it on..." She stopped. "On what? Hotels? Trips? Lingerie for your boyfriend?" Silence. "Get a lawyer, Lauren. You're going to need one." She hired an attorney eventually, a junior partner at a mid-size firm named Bradley Hutchins, young and eager, but clearly out of his depth. He took one look at the evidence Victoria had compiled and advised Lauren to settle. "Fighting this will only make it worse," he told her. "I know because Patricia had contacts at his firm. The documentation is overwhelming. You have no counter-narrative. Your companion is dealing with his own legal troubles and won't be providing any support, financially or otherwise." Lauren called me again, this time with Hutchins on the line. "My client would like to propose a settlement discussion," he said, his voice professionally neutral. "I'm listening." "She's willing to admit to the affair and return the transferred funds in exchange for an equitable split of remaining assets and no public disclosure of the circumstances." I laughed. "You're asking me to pretend this was a normal divorce? After everything she did?" "Mr. Mitchell, here's my counteroffer. She admits to the affair, returns every penny she took, accepts a reduced share of assets due to her misconduct, waives any claim to alimony, and we're done. No public disclosure, no dragging this through the courts. Clean and quick." "That's... my client couldn't possibly. Then we'll see you in court, and I'll make sure every email she sent to Derek Walsh becomes part of the public record." The line went quiet. I heard muffled conversation on their end. Hutchins came back. "We'll consider your proposal and get back to you." The settlement negotiations took 6 weeks. Lauren tried various tactics: tears, threats, appeals to our shared history. She accused me of emotional cruelty, of driving her away with my work obsession. She claimed the affair had been a symptom of our failing marriage, not the cause. None of it moved me. "I've seen the emails," I told her, during one of our required mediation sessions. "You weren't desperate or lonely. You were happy. You were in love with him. You were counting down the days until you could leave me and start your new life. That's not fair." "Fair?" I turned to the mediator, a patient woman named Ruth who'd seen too many divorces to be surprised by anything. She wrote to her affair partner that I'd never see it coming. Those were her exact words. Does that sound like someone who was driven to infidelity by a neglectful husband? Ruth looked at Lauren with something like pity. "I think we should take a break." In the end, Lauren accepted my terms. She had no choice. I kept the house. She returned the $47,000 she'd transferred, or what was left of it, which meant selling some jewelry and liquidating her retirement account. Our remaining assets were split, with her share reduced significantly due to the documented adultery and financial misconduct. No alimony. The evidence made that possibility laughable. I retained full ownership of my consulting business. She would walk away with a fraction of what she'd expected, and nothing she'd schemed for. We met at Victoria's office to sign the final papers. The conference room was all dark wood and leather, neutral and professional, a space designed for endings. Lauren arrived with Hutchins. She looked like a ghost of the woman I'd married. Thinner, older, the confident spark in her eyes extinguished. Her clothes, once always impeccable, hung slightly loose. Her hair needed attention. The transformation was startling. "Let's keep this simple," Victoria said, spreading documents across the table. "Both parties have agreed to the terms outlined in the settlement. We just need signatures." Hutchins nodded. Lauren stared at the papers like they might bite her. We signed in silence. Page after page, initialing clauses, dating sections, formalizing the end of 8 years. The scratch of pens was the only sound. When we reached the final page, Lauren hesitated. Her pen hovered over the signature line. "I did love you," she said quietly, not looking at me. "In the beginning, I really did." The others in the room, Victoria, Hutchins, the paralegal who'd been witnessing, went still. I set down my own pen. "You loved the life I provided. The security, the comfort, the freedom to pursue your career without worrying about bills. There's a difference." "That's not true." "Maybe not at first. But somewhere along the way, it became true. And you decided that Derek could give you something better, more excitement, more passion, whatever it was you thought you were missing." I shrugged. "You were wrong about that, obviously. But by then you'd already burned everything down." She finally met my eyes. I saw tears there, but I couldn't tell if they were from grief or self-pity. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for what it's worth." "It's not worth much, but I appreciate you saying it." She signed. I signed. Victoria collected the documents. "That concludes our business," Victoria said briskly. "The decree will be finalized within 30 days. Lauren stood, gathering her purse. At the door, she turned back. "What will you do now?" "Move on, same as everyone does." She nodded slowly, then walked out. Hutchins followed after a brief handshake with Victoria. When they were gone, Victoria turned to me. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You handled that well, better than most." "I've had practice, closing cases, tying up loose ends." I gathered my copies of the documents. This was just another case. Victoria studied me for a long moment. "If you need anything, a referral to a therapist, whatever, don't hesitate to call." I appreciate that. But I knew I wouldn't call. I'd handled this the way I handled everything else, methodically, precisely, with emotions carefully controlled. It had worked. I'd protected my assets, exposed the truth, and emerged more or less intact. If there was a cost to that approach, I'd pay it later. In private, where no one could see. The weeks after the divorce were strange. I'd spent so much energy on investigation and strategy that I didn't know what to do with myself once it was finished. I sold the house. Too many memories in every room, too many lies embedded in the walls. I bought a condo downtown, closer to my office. Sleek and modern and empty of history. A fresh start, people called it. To me, it was just a different kind of emptiness. Patricia Lawson called to check on me about a month after everything was finalized. "How are you holding up?" "Fine, busy with work." Most men in your position would have exploded, made mistakes, done something stupid that gave their wives ammunition. She paused. "You played it like a chess game." "I spent 10 years reconstructing other people's lies. I wasn't going to be destroyed by the lies in my own home." "Cold," she observed. "Practical," I countered. She laughed. "Take care of yourself, Ryan. And if you ever need anything, professionally or otherwise, I know where to find you." I heard updates occasionally, through mutual acquaintances or Patricia's continued monitoring. Lauren moved into a small apartment across the city. Her job at Hartley and Associates became awkward. People knew, they whispered. Conversations stopped when she walked past. She was technically good at her work, so they didn't fire her, but she'd never advance there now. Too much scandal attached to her name. Derek Walsh settled his divorce for a staggering sum. His business never recovered from the scrutiny. Last I heard, he'd taken a position with a firm in another state, a significant step down from the empire he'd been building. Natalie got the house, primary custody, and most of his liquid assets. Her father's legal team had been thorough. Megan and Jason Price were in marriage counseling. Jason had forgiven her, technically, but the trust between them was fractured in ways that might never fully heal. Every time Megan went somewhere without him, he probably wondered if she was lying. Christina Hayes reached out to me once, about 3 months after the divorce was final. An email, short and awkward. "Ryan, I know you probably hate me, and I understand. But I wanted to say I'm sorry. I should have told you. I should have done the right thing instead of protecting my sister. I was trying to be loyal, but I was wrong. I hope someday you can forgive me." I replied briefly, "I don't hate you, Christina. You were put in an impossible position. Take care of yourself." Forgiveness was more complicated than that, but she didn't need to know the details. Spring arrived, and with it, a new equilibrium. My work kept me busy. A major fraud case that required months of document analysis, a financial reconstruction that made headlines when it resulted in indictments. I was good at what I did, and the work filled the empty spaces where a marriage used to be. I thought about Lauren sometimes, not with longing or regret, but with the detached curiosity of an analyst reviewing old data. How had I missed the signs? What had made me so blind? The answer, I eventually concluded, was simple. I'd trusted her. I'd believed the lie because I wanted to believe it, because the alternative was too painful to consider. She'd counted on that trust, exploited it, built her deception on its foundation. I wouldn't make that mistake again. Summer. A work event at a downtown hotel. Networking and cocktails with potential clients. I was nursing a whiskey at the bar when someone sat down beside me. A woman about my age, dark hair, intelligent eyes, professional but not stuffy. "You're Ryan Mitchell, right? The forensic accountant?" "That's me. Julia Reeves." She extended her hand. Firm grip, no nonsense. "Corporate compliance attorney. I've heard good things about your work." We talked about work for a while. The intricacies of financial fraud, the challenges of proving intent, the satisfaction of untangling complex schemes. She was sharp and quick-witted, the kind of person who kept up with rapid conversation without missing a beat. Eventually, we drifted to other topics. Books, travel, the absurdity of networking events and the people who actually enjoyed them. "So, Ryan Mitchell," she said, signaling the bartender for another drink. "What do you do for fun when you're not reconstructing corporate crimes?" I considered the question. "I solve puzzles. I figure out what's true when people are trying to hide it." Julia tilted her head. "That sounds exhausting." "It can be," I met her eyes, "but I'm pretty good at it." "Well," she smiled, "maybe you need some new hobbies." "Maybe I do." We exchanged numbers before the evening ended. A few weeks later, I was at my usual coffee shop when I saw her. Lauren, across the street, walking with a man I didn't recognize. She looked tired, older than her years. The man was talking to her, gesturing animatedly, and she nodded along without much enthusiasm. She saw me through the window. For a moment, our eyes met. I raised my coffee cup slightly. A gesture of acknowledgement, nothing more. Civil. Distant. She looked away first. I finished my coffee and got on with my day. There was nothing left to say, No closure to seek, no final confrontation to have. The story was over. I had work to do.